Everybody in this room deserves better news journalism. I'm here to tell you that the fundamental nature of news journalism has changed for the worst in the last 20 years, almost without anybody noticing. And that many of the things that we look to journalists to provide us with, accuracy, impartiality, context, depth, are all under threat. I'd also like to try to convince you that an antidote might come in the form of a new slow journalism revolution. I'm going to make my case to you with the aid of 7 headlines. Here's the first. Guilty Amanda Knox looks stunned as her appeal against murder conviction is rejected. It's a headline from the Mail Online from October 2011. The Mail Online is the world's single most read English language newspaper website. It has just under 190 million unique visitors every month. The story refers to the court appeal of Amanda Knox, who was found guilty of the murder of British student Meredith Kercher in Italy, in Perugia in Italy, in 2009. The court appeal generated massive international news interest. But as many people in this room will know, there's a problem with this headline. It is the complete opposite of the truth. Amanda Knox's appeal was successful, her conviction was overturned, and she returned to Seattle, where she's been living for the last 3 years. So how did the Mail Online get this story wrong? They had prepared 2 versions of the story in advance. One for if the court appeal was successful, one for if it was unsuccessful. Their representative in the court heard the word guilty, pushed the button, and the story went up online. But it wasn't guilty to the charge of murder. It was guilty to the much lesser charge of slander. And for 2 or 3 minutes, the world's single biggest English language news site had completely the wrong story on its site until somebody switched it with the other story. But it wasn't just a headline. It was actually several hundred words of description and invented quotes. So, for example, we learned that as Amanda Knox heard the dreadful news, she sank into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably. That the Kercher family stared directly ahead, looking across only once at the distraught Knox family. We learned that prosecutors were delighted with the verdict, but they said that at a human level, it was sad that a young person would be spending so much time in jail. None of this happened. But in order to understand why this sort of thing happens and why these sort of mistakes occur, we need to understand one very fundamental thing about a change in the news media recently, which is that being first has become much more important than being right. Here's the second slide. #AmyDead. When Amy Winehouse, the famous singer, died in Camden in London in 2011, news of her death started trending on Twitter within an hour. 10% of tweets during that hour concerned her death. That's 20 million people speaking about an event before a single news organization has published or broadcast a word about it. It's the equivalent of the entire population of Australia beating every journalist in the world to the story. Obviously, we all know about the extreme speed of diffusion of news and rumor online. But for journalists, it's a major problem. For centuries, they have been the ones who broke the news. They have been the funnel through which the news passes. And what they're realizing now is that if they want to keep up with the speed with which news breaks online, then they need to jettison many of the things that they thought were fundamental to their craft. Taking a bit of time, speaking to some people, finding out some facts, getting some proper quotes, and giving their first best approximation of the truth. Sadly, the declining fortunes of the news industry and the algorithms which govern online news distribution mean that things are unlikely to get better anytime soon. Here's another headline. El País sacks 128 journalists. In 2012, El País sacked almost a third of its editorial staff, and it requested the remaining journalists to accept a 15% pay decrease. But of course, they're not alone. In American newsrooms, the number of reporters has fallen by 31% in 10 years, between 2002 and 2012. News organizations are sacking journalists because they're losing money. My favorite newspaper, The Guardian, lost £30.9 million in 2013. That's £122,134 every single working